Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chali 2na, and this is the Fish Tank. And today, I'd like to welcome Mr. Bruce Montgomery from my hometown of Chicago, Illinois. Now, Bruce is the founder of Green Engine Grow, a craft cannabis grow facility with a brand new facility in the Southside of Chicago. Bruce is an owner, and he's going to tell us what's up with cannabis in Chicago. We're trying to ensure Black and brown ownership in this industry. That's a must. Now check us out as we address all the key questions in cannabis. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's up? My name is Chali 2na. This is my man, Mr. Bruce Montgomery, and we are just going to take a tour around Chicago and talk about the importance of green engine.
Well, I was alive in 1968. My father owned a business on the west side of Chicago. He had a laundromat, and a laundromat was on Madison Street, just off of Madison in California. And so I can remember as a very young person, the last time there was a riot going on in Chicago. And there was a wide scale desperation and destruction and chaos. And part of what motivated me throughout my life to try to do some things and be involved was that experience, because I remember before and after that situation, I remember the vibrancy of the west side of Chicago. My family had moved south, but my father still owned the building and the business, and I would come with him to work often and spend a lot of time in and around Madison Street, around Marshall High School, around Kedzie, around the old Sears. We talked about that. And so I remember the West Side as being vibrant and beautiful and all different types of nationalities and experiences. And it was just a wonderful place. Even though I moved south because of my father having a business on the West Side, I remember that. But because of the what happened after the death of Dr. King and the riots, those communities on both the South and the West Side, in many cases, never recovered. There was those properties that were burned down, and those blocks, entire blocks, were just bulldozed. And here, some 50, 60 years later, there was never any comeback. There was never no reinvestment. There was never. So when you look at some of these neighborhoods on the South and the West Side, and I often say when I travel around the country, I see a lot of places that have changed and grown and had some investment and expansion. But coming back to many places in Chicago, it's been a tale of two cities. It's been downtown looks like nothing like it used to look back in the day, skyscrapers and condos. And Charlie, I know you remember this. Who lived downtown? Didn't nobody live downtown. Downtown was for working.
Downtown, you had a lot of money.
That's right. It was only a couple of buildings you could live in, Hancock Building or something like that. Now,
what's the name of that building that's right there by the water fountain? Why am I
you talk what, like Lake Point Tower or
there's a building where every time we used to drive down Lakeshore Drive going north.
Oh yeah. Outer Drive East.
Yeah, and they have this like a whole bunch of balconies, but the building is really tall. And I used to be like, wow, I don't know if I would walk out on that balcony.
Well, Lakeshore Drive curved right around that building.
Right there.
So when you would go there, it was like you would drive it right into the building and then you curve around. Well, exactly. Now all of that whole neighborhood is almost unrecognizable. There's so much development around what they call Millennium Park and Grant Park, and Lake Point Tower used to be out there by itself. And now they're just, so the point is there's been a huge investment in Chicago, but that investment has been segregated like everything else in Chicago. Chicago, when we travel around and have a chance to move and live in other areas, we say, Chicago was like confined, it's like neighborhoods and boundaries and people, there people be just a few blocks away from the lakefront and never go,
Right.
What's that building over there? That's Museum of Science and Industry. I ain't never been, I don't know nothing about it. Man, you only live 5 blocks away. How you ain't been to the museum? you know, but that's just the way Chicago is. It's so restricted. And so, you know, now what, you know, Green Engine is trying to do, and many people are trying to do, you know, you're doing it, but people are trying to say change is needed. There's got to be some opportunity. And Charlie, I really have to say, you know, it is, I spent a little time in the music business, you know, back in the day, and many people felt that in order to make it in the music industry, they had to leave Chicago because there weren't any labels, there wasn't any real activity, there wasn't a lot of places that had live music anymore, and there was, and for a city that is based on music. I mean, this is where gospel comes from. This is where blues comes from. You know, this, you know, R&B and you know, Jackson 5 and all this kind of great history. And yet people all through 70s, 80s, 90s were like, man, you know, I got to get up out of here, because if I'm trying to do something, I got to make a move. And so that's part of the frustration in Chicago, is people in communities don't feel like they have options, and they feel claustrophobic. And so, you know, Green Engine is looking at this so-called, you know, new industry of cannabis and saying, something got to be different this time. You know, something's got to be different. You can't have the challenge of, you know, the war on drugs and have your foot on people's neck and everything. And then here, now all of a sudden you open it up, but then we still supposed to be on the sidelines and not participating. You know, just doesn't make any sense.
Let alone righting the wrongs of the past, you know what I'm saying, with it. It's like, it's crazy. Like you should be using this, you know, in my opinion, common sense would dictate you would be using the opportunity like this to straighten up some of the things that you made wrong. Yeah, I mean.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, this is, and this, so, you know, you and I talked and just met just a week ago.
Right.
And in that week's time, the whole country has seen something that, like I said, we haven't seen. But it wasn't, you know, the George Floyd, that was just the match to a gasoline can that had been sitting, getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then, you know, so like you say, systemic issues that have marginalized families, peoples, communities, disinvestment, access to capital, not being allowed to participate in broader economies. And then a friend of mine and I were talking the other day, when people were criminally charged, and those charges were on their record, that affected them with jobs and education and getting a mortgage and everything. So you relegated thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of people to limitation, to lack, to you know, having narrow focus on what they thought their lives could be. So in some small way, I think what everybody sees after the events of this weekend in Chicago and around the country, we got to change a lot of things. You know, we've got to change education. We've got to change the way communities are, healthcare. But this whole thing happened on the back of COVID, you know, and everybody saw around the country, Black people dying at the larger percentages. They were dying in some places where it wasn't even hardly no Black people. Black people dying in Montana. Hell, ain't no Black people in Montana. How they die? You know, so what's going on? You know, this was the disparity that was all out of proportion. So we've got to change a lot of things. And the hope is that, and I think you know this, change is how we make it happen. You know, you didn't get to where you are in the industry because somebody said, hey, Charlie, come on in, man. We got a place for you. You know, you had to fight, scratch, claw, you know, do everything, just get in the game. So that's the way it's going to be now, but we've got to go on and get in these games and make a way for ourselves as best we can.
Right, this is real. I guess that's a perfect segue to the next question, which is I wanted to ask you to describe, I guess from a bird's eye view, some of the key takeaways from the current legislation on cannabis, like, you know, like how it affects the social equity. You kind of answered some of the questions from the last, but I mean, within that whole thing, I'm thinking like intent versus reality and certain things like that.
Well, I appreciate, the way you're trying to be very diplomatic. Um, but the truth is, here in Illinois, California is very different. You guys have had, some cannabis legislation. You've had medical cannabis for a number of years. And here in Illinois, the legislators looked around the country and saw that there was a lot of talk about social equity, but in many ways it wasn't codified into legislation. So
Right.
very insightfully, a group of legislators in the Senate and the House and the state worked very, very hard. Illinois got medical cannabis a number of years ago, and that was not handled very inclusively. It was handled kind of behind closed doors. It was very private. Some people got in the industry that took a lot to do that. But so the thought was that as we moved to recreation, there needed to be some expansion. And it was used to create this notion of social equity to deal with what you were talking about, the acts, the impacts of the war on drugs, incarceration, a lack of economic opportunity, and the fact that in all of the medical licenses in Illinois, not one of them was owned or had diverse participation at any level. So there was no ownership, there was no management, there was no nothing. Black people were just on the outside looking in, and many communities of color were on the outside looking in. So these legislators rose to the occasion, and by many respects, put forward the most dramatic document that calls for inclusion and ownership of dispensaries and craft cultivation and transportation, and then also talking about the industry as it creates the funds from taxes, that those funds could be reinvested to reclaim, re-educate, reinvest in those communities that have been negatively affected. But unfortunately, to this point, it still hasn't happened. The laws are on the books, but it was supposed to be May 1st. They were going to announce the first round of applicants to be successful in getting dispensary licenses. And because of COVID and all of the activities, the governor came out with an executive order and said there would be no decision on those dispensary licenses. Now people have hot their homes, they borrowed money from family members, they have called you for some money, say, hey, Charlie, man, help me out, man, I'm trying to get in, and done everything they can, because getting in this game is not inexpensive. Just the application alone is arduous and complicated, and there are fees associated with even applying for these licenses. Well, here it comes May 1st, and there was I think over 700 people tried to get these licenses, and they were told, wait, it's not going to happen, and we're not even going to tell you when it's going to happen. You just had to wait. So I think that this is, again, part of the frustration. And at the same time, the people who were already in the business, starting January, they were grandfathered into recreation. So they started selling recreation to the public January 1st and broke all kinds of records. Every month this year, Illinois has generated $40 million in recreational sales. All of that windfall went to the existing players, and then they started picking prime locations. They want to be downtown, they want to be north side, they want to be here. So they've been having a field day doing business, and everybody else on the sideline like, what up? But so all of these things add up to the tension, the drama, and the opportunity. And I have the pleasure of knowing some of the legislators. I talk to them, I tell them there was all kind of brouhaha in the city council, but we have to turn from challenge to solution. So part of the reason I'm having this conversation today, and I'm so happy, you're supportive of the green engine concept, because we need to get the word out that just because you put laws on the books doesn't mean that actually gets the job done.
Exactly.
What's going to get the job done is advocacy, education, mindset, so that people can start to know, don't think it's over. It ain't even started. This is the beginning of the beginning, and we still trying to get to first base.
Wow. That's crazy, because I was just even thinking back to like what you were saying earlier about the riots in Chicago, back in those days. My mom was at that riot, and like I was just comparing while you were speaking about it to '92, because I was here in Los Angeles too during those riots, and the similarities are uncanny. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's crazy, from like the snatching of ATMs out of the wall and things of that nature, and it's all the way boiling back to something that was deemed illegal. But finally the law caught up to it. You know what I'm saying? And then now, who would have thought like COVID and even something like the death of George Floyd would be thrown in the mix of all of these different struggles that we got to have in the first place for this issue alone. Like, what I'm saying, regardless of everything else that happened. It's crazy that you, because I didn't really realize, like the gatekeepers themselves, like, describe those guys. Who were they in Chicago that can either help or hurt this particular situation?
Well, I think we're finding that same thing. There is an intersection between all of these things: economics, education, healthcare, home housing. In Chicago was very restricted in terms of where people could even buy a house in certain communities. It just is in the last 20 or 30 years that Blacks and Hispanics, people of color, had open housing to move in different areas. Many people were crowded into what we used to call in Chicago the projects.
Right.
People were crowded into those government-assisted housing, and those facilities still have very restrictive policies when it comes to something now that's been, like you say, made legal by law, but that still is under a federal system that is not recognizing that. So
the point I was trying to make, yeah.
So when we talk about gatekeepers, really what we need is, again, more outreach, advocacy, and education. We need people, explaining, I was telling my partner on this project, Wendy, when we were talking about you, and I was saying, look at what you've done with your life. You have become a visual artist. You're a music artist. You're a business person. You're a husband. You're a father. And so you incorporate, you're building a quality life, and being involved with cannabis has in no way limited your ability to contribute so many good things in the world. So people don't understand that, because this thing has been so besmirched and negative connotations, and then the over-criminalization and all these types of things. So people have been crowded into a thought form of negativity that has no bearing on reality. People can, it's so exciting. What I've learned so much in the green engine process about cultivation, the talent and the skill. This is science in action. This is people who have actual skills. And as I've done reading every day on this subject, this industry has moved forth technology and agriculture at a pace that everybody in the world is remarkable, because aquaponics, organic farming, not dealing with the negativities of over-chemicalization and these types of things. This industry is right at the cutting edge of so many things that could potentially be health benefits. And so one of the things that Green Engine wants to do is, as we start to create jobs with our effort at bringing cultivation into the urban community, this is people coming out of Chicago State University with science degrees, chemistry, biology, people that have pharmacy knowledge, people that have manufacturing and IT skills, where they're monitoring the data on what's growing and how it's doing, and then how it is moving through the process. So these are what the communities have been hungry for: good paying opportunities, to be part of an economic upswing. I spent most of my adult life in the computer, software, and telecommunications industry. And as we look at this industry today, too many of the leadership companies in the industry have basically no diverse employees. When you look at Google, you look at Facebook, you look at all of these companies that everybody uses, they don't have any, they hardly have no diverse employees. They don't hardly have any women, they don't hardly have any Blacks or Hispanics. This industry has done a terrible job. We want this next tech industry, the tech of cannabis, to be different, to be inclusive. And so we need, like you say, who are the gatekeepers? The gatekeepers really are us. If we don't see ourselves as contributing and adding value and participating, shame on us. We've got to take a stand and say, no, we may be missed out on .com, but we ain't missing out on .dis.
That's right.
We're going to be in this game, because we can do something here. And it's not just what we think it is. It's so much more, because the tip of the iceberg, we don't even, this plan has not been researched. It hasn't really brought the real full weight of science and biology to it. We know it can deal with things like sleep disorders, epilepsy, other kinds of chronic conditions. There have been many kinds of athletes that have come back from surgeries and other things because of this activity. And this has not even been fully researched. So it's really a chance to participate on the ground floor of what is going to be, and currently is right now in the world, one of the fastest growing industries on the planet.
Yeah, this is true, man. It's crazy. When I was a kid, running around, listening to reggae music, and getting into the whole stoner lifestyle. One of my favorite songs was from a guy called Pato Bantai, and he used to say, it's a song called Sensimilia, and inside the song he's talking about meeting this guy, and he was explaining the properties of marijuana to him, and he was like, "This is Sensi, the healing of the nation. In some places, doctors use it as herbal medication. And Ronald Reagan, this is how long ago, and Ronald Reagan smoked it just before him go up on television." And I was just like, I used to laugh at that because it was comedic, but I used to always be like, wow. I hear that we could cure, damn near everything, but then later on in life, you get older, it gets legal, you start to see all of the medical properties and all of these things that it can help, and it's just an amazing thing. It makes me laugh when I think about that song.
Well, this weekend was one of the most. A private company, SpaceX, launched a rocket that took some guys out in space to be part of the space station. At the same time, people on the street marching and protesting, and then people are in London, Lisbon, Paris, Norway, all around the world, recognizing that change must come to America. For the place that has stood up and talked so much about freedom and equality and equity and have none of it. Right. It's high time that there be some real equity. And so equity is not just social equity, meaning, and that's the term that's used in Illinois for, giving a chance for there to be some diverse ownership in this industry. But equity is across the board. Equity is about respect. It's about integrity. It's about capital. It's about, doing business. One of the things I tell friends that call me, I've been getting calls from all around the country. People say, "Man, what's going on in Chicago? What's it look like out there? What do you think the answer is?" The answer is do business with somebody. Spend some money with somebody. Don't have one set of circumstances in one area and not in another area. Let's become friends. Let's become trading partners. Let's become business allies. So it's really, we had to reach out to you in California because, you're even though you're not here, living anymore, you still embody the spirit, and exactly what the deal is in Chicago. So your voice is the voice that's needed to tell as you travel around the world and tell people, here's how we want to think about a better future. We want to think about a future that's inclusive, that's built on opportunity and technology and benefits. And I know these guys in Chicago called Green Engine, and they're trying to do something about it. You need to check them out and hear what they're talking about and figure out how you might help their cause, you know, and understand what they're trying to do. And your voice is so that people don't just leave Chicago and forget about it, but still feel that connection, that visceral connection. And we're so happy to have the connection with, you know, part of our team, the Fat Bull guys out there in the most richest growing place on earth, that they're coming here to Chicago to help us understand the science and the technology of what we're trying to do in Chicago with Green Engine and have this phenomenal craft indoor grow facility right here on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah, man, that's what's up, man. You know, just as a Chicago and living in California, I've been able to take advantage of that aspect of the whole situation, man. So big up to Fat Bowl, because those guys are amazing. Like, period. That's just what it is. Before we go on to the next question, I wanted you to, because you touched on it a little bit, but I wanted you to describe, you know, some of the processes and that are required to obtain the permits. And, you know, in the cannabis operation in Chicago, and like kind of how like I said, you touched on a little bit about how they exclude us, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Well, it is a state-run process. It is one that requires just a huge effort to try to fill out the paperwork and the documents in order to apply for a license, because this is not an industry or a business you can walk in. It's arguably the most regulated business, you know, in America, on the planet. There's a process of putting together all of the strategies and plans and how you're going to create a building and a structure and who are the owners and what is their background and what is your tax revenue and how do you qualify for living in the social equity defined areas for last 5 years or longer. And so it is a completely paper intensive, legal intensive, accounting intensive process just to apply to have the opportunity to be in a competitive bid for a license. And that is very daunting and very expensive because, you know, lawyers are required, accountants are required. You've got to have a complete plan on how you're going to build and operate and secure the process and how you're going to engage the community. So you have to have contractors come in, architects, other people. And so it's really almost laughable to think, who's going to do this? You know, who is going to be able to pull that kind of, it's like saying, I'm going to give you a chance to be in the NBA. Well, where am I going to play at? You know, and how am I going to recruit the team? And I got to compete against LeBron, who going to pay his contract? I mean, you know, you could give a person so-called a way in the front door, but if they don't have a whole army behind them, they're about to get in a fight that they can't win. So that is really one of the important questions and one of the important messages, because this is why it takes social equity. People are not going to be successful by ourselves. We need, just like what Green Engine is doing, you need people that have, me trying to do this by myself, it wasn't going to fly. You know, I needed to have some friends from who could come to the table with deep skills. And I think this is what's so compelling about this opportunity, is it takes people with capital, because even if we are so fortunate to get and be awarded a license, then the hard part really starts. You got to raise the money to build the building and hire the crew and outfit the facility with all of the technology in order to then have the opportunity to go through this process of growing a product that will be competitive in the marketplace. And so this is something that takes the kind of team. And I'm so grateful that to have a friend and a partner like Wendy Esger and her family and friends, and then for her to, you know, connect with people all the way in California, like the guys from Fat Bull. This is, so you have to have faith, because this is divine order. I didn't do any of this. You know, I did not sit up at night and just think this up. There were things in motion that started, you know, way before I showed up. And so you got to have that kind of faith that when you step out on faith, things are going to be added, you know, to you that help to complete that picture. And this is one of those examples, just like getting, you know, connected to you, to be able to know that there are allies that you've never met, you know. So this gets back to having a praying grandmother or having a praying mother, a praying grandfather, because we're standing on the shoulders of people, you know, to get this opportunity today. And we need good people to see that there are good business opportunities in the Black community that are worthy of investing in and giving a chance to get into a major market with upside potential.
That's what's up. That's what you mean by when, you know, like, I guess all of the daunting processes that you have to go through and all of the money that needs to be spent. It's easy for a big business to come in and just move everybody who doesn't have those type of armies behind them to the side, right? That's basically kind of.
Well, the you know, the entire landscape of America is, you know, people have been given advantages because of circumstances. If you have sharecroppers and you are relegating them to marginalized economic positions that advantage you, and then you inherit that business, you know, you have a legacy of privilege, you know. And but then if you have been marginalized and have redlining and have the war on drugs, you have inherited a disadvantage by circumstance. So what this is trying to do is say, this is a time for an opportunity to connect with resource, to create a new paradigm, to create a new road to equity and inclusion. And is it rickety? Is it tricky? Is it some banana peels on the road? Hell yeah, it is, you know, because even when we, which is the, you know, we know that anytime we've gotten in anything, you know, when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, could Jackie Robinson play baseball? No question, he could play baseball, but that has stopped people from trying everything they could to undermine his capacity to do what he clearly knew how to do. So, you know, do I have a business background? Do I love business and economic development and business development and marketing and technology? Of course I do. But I need to have the good support of people like yourself, and more importantly, again, people who have resources, because many of the folks who got in the game because of their ability to capitalize their vision on an opportunity that they saw emerging. And many of those folks that have done that are trying to maintain that advantage for as long as they can, because you know, they're hoping that. And so is this delay of awarding the licenses in Illinois is very, very frustrating, and because it's giving the existing players a head start, and they've already had a head start. So, you know, when are we going to be able to catch up? But I believe that, you know, there's no accounting for innovation and creativity. So we believe that when word gets out about what Green Engine is doing, somebody checks out that Fat Bull product, they'll be like, hey, I don't know what the deal is, but I know this is what's happening. So
that's brilliant. So, you know what I mean?
That's what we're hoping. And but it takes people who can believe and understand and have passion for that, and then also to be willing to learn, because you've got to be teachable. You got to create some relationships. But this industry has a chance to do something that rarely has been done in America, and that is bring resources together with underserved opportunities and bust through and give some. And this is what obviously America needs right now. Is America needs real equity, real change, you know, real leadership. and real vision. And of all places that it could come from, here is this little industry that people, discredited and marginalized. And this industry could be a pivotal example of the way forward.
That's right. That's right. So that parlays into the next question, which is beautiful. Talk to us about your plans for Green Engine. And you know what I'm saying, like how it directly serves the community and that it operates in and job creations and such. Like just break it down for everybody so they can really understand what's going on here.
Okay, well, our plan, the plan that we've created, is one to build a ultra high quality indoor craft grow facility on the south side of Chicago, on 95th Street, which is, you and I joked about this because out where, there used to be Fun Town and in that neighborhood, London Townhouses is around the corner, right around the corner from two wonderful institutions that we want to and are already connected to, Chicago State University and Olive Harvey College, which is a community college. Both of those two schools have already established some level of cannabis. In fact, this first certificate program in the city of Chicago was at Chicago State University, which allowed people to get exposed to this industry and have a good baseline education certificate. And the first graduating class happened just at the end of the year. And in fact, one of that graduating class is on our team. So we've already brought somebody on board from the community out of that Chicago State cannabis education program. So what we want to do is continue to work with Chicago State, with Olive Harvey. I'm very active in the Chicago chapter of Normal, which they have been one of the leading voices for inclusion and equity, not only here in Chicago, but around the country. But the Chicago chapter of Normal for the marijuana legalization, they have been outstanding in their advocacy and work to educate legislators, to go down to Springfield, to fight for the legislation, to really be giving testimony to all the things that we're talking about here today. So Green Engine has every intention of being involved with education, with community service, with helping to connect and engage. We're working very closely with our elected officials in the area of where we are. So we've got the support and back. We couldn't have even come this far if it wasn't for the alderman who had to have community meetings. And she said that, I'm not gonna make the decision. The community's gonna make the decision. So either if you all want this, you gotta tell me you want it. And the thing about what Green Engine is doing is we have nothing to do with retail. So we're the producer, manufacturer, wholesale provider. We're gonna be in a contained facility with a lot of technology, and we're going to be growing, and then we make that product and put that product back into the marketplace. We think that we have a potential over the next 12 to 24 months to probably create just under 100 jobs, full and part-time jobs in this process. So that's where it's at, is giving people, and right now, with close to 1 million people in the state of Illinois with unemployment, this country is desperately got to have an economic turnaround that is more inclusive and especially gives people more than just, during the time of the pandemic, a lot of Black people had to go to work because they were the ones in Amazon and Walmart and on the front lines and driving the buses and in the post office. So people haven't stopped working throughout the entire whole pandemic process. And so they risked their lives. A lot of people in the healthcare facilities, nurses and people in the ER, all those folks, those people on the front lines risking their lives. Many people passed away serving others, and so we've got to do something to create a pathway more than just a minimum wage job, something that could have a future to it. And in just the last couple of days, we've been talking about how to have a cooperative economic model to this, so that some of our employees can end up being stakeholders, shareholders, and having some economic potential. How many people work at Walmart, have any stock in Walmart? How many people work for, Best Buy, have some Best Buy shares, and if Best Buy does well at the end of the year, there's some profit sharing. You know, we've lost sight of some of that in American society, where we think it's okay for CEOs to make $100 million and have $20 million a year pensions for the rest of their life, while employees get kicked out the door and go watch. They wish they got to go watch. I mean,
right. Forgot about it.
Right. Sure. So that's what the Green Engine plan is to create a tech-led craft grow facility, to have that facility be on the south side of Chicago on 95th Street, just west of Stony Island, and to be a place that creates jobs and has engagement with our education institutions to bring on skilled and talented people to work in a skilled and talented profession.
So here's the off-brand question. I got some brothers who are skilled in this field we're talking about, but they're not necessarily trained. So like conventionally trained. So how would one come across a job application, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like, how would
that's a straight up question, and that's very, very real. I mean, that's as real as it gets, because shouldn't people who actually know the business be able to do the business on instead of the back street, on Front Street? So exactly right. I mean, I know people as well, and I think that we are going to work with any and all resources to get the word out. Right now, there are a number of organizations that are working on expungement. And I was on a call just yesterday with working with those groups to allow people to be a part of the vetting or the outreach that we'll do to find some folks. So there's going to be a lot of folks like the ones you and I are talking about, and this may be their chance to go from, from the side street to the front street and get in the game this kind of way. And I'll tell you what, folks have skills. I mean, they got real skills. And many of us have known this for a long time. I know one thing, they can count a lot faster than I can count. So, man, you count this stuff kind of quick, don't you? So, so I know they're pretty good at math. I know that.
Yes, got to be.
So math is the cornerstone of all science. So I believe that, and look, anytime that we talk, we're laughing about Jackie Robinson, or we're laughing about, I was looking at some old clips just the other day. I don't know what made me do this. I was looking at some clips of Wilt Chamberlain. And
still,
man, I mean, Wilt was crazy. And the people were saying that, Wilt was the first really superstar that got paid, big money. When he got the $100,000 contract, that was like $100,000.
Right.
It was ridiculous. But the point is, anytime things have opened up, look how much bigger they've created a pie for everybody.
Right.
So, after Wilt opened the game up, that the game has never looked back. And franchises, you and I could have bought the Lakers. We could have hustled some money in the corner, bought the Lakers for, all of these franchises were sold for peanuts. Didn't nobody care about these games until Wilt and Jabbar and the people came in and changed the game, So same thing with this game. We haven't seen what this game is going to be until the people you and I are talking about come in this game and say, look, man, you all think you all know something about marketing just because you got an MBA. Let me show you what marketing is all about. And then they, what? And then this is going to be big. And so then people will start to realize the same thing the NBA realized and the NFL realized. When you cut people in the game's about to get bigger for everybody, and everybody can win.
That's right. That's what's up. For real. That's what I'm tripping on, like watching the Last Dance, and how, Mike, how they were talking about each other's salary and stuff. And I was just remembering, like, okay, Mike didn't really get paid that much. He was getting paid more than everybody on the team. But like, then you talk about later, like how you said, gets greater later. Somebody like Shaq, who had nowhere near as much skill as these guys, got paid hundreds of millions over X amount of time.
Oh God!
So yeah, like it just got bigger and better, and
exactly
the contribution of Jordan, everybody, So yeah,
and we need those figures. One of the things I love about LeBron even more than his basketball talent is he is such a intelligent, articulate, and a family and friend guy. He is hung with his boys from the hood all the way through the process. You know, he never cut his regular boys loose throughout the entire process. And they have done business and done all kinds of different things. And so that is the new paradigm that we need. We don't need people to come in and then get rich and then disappear. And so right now, and you and I talked about this, and so you're part of Common and Chance and Kanye, you know, staying engaged. And I'm so happy to see it's taken a long time, but I'm so happy to see you and Common and these guys still be connected to Chicago, because we need your voice and your creativity to still speak to the young people, to speak to people in the communities. And you know, Wendy and I were talking about this because, you know, your work as a multidisciplinary artist is really critical, because recognizing that people, you know, you have a lot of different skills. Don't just think that, you know, don't put yourself in one category. You know, if you feel like you want to take some pictures and pick up a camera, pick up a camera. If you think you want to do some production and get behind the equipment and do what you need to do, you know, this is the home of house music, and house music is international. But now somebody calls it EDM in Germany and they make $1 million. What?
Exactly.
You know, they don't know nothing about no more than the house boys know. Please.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
So then we've got to recognize that this stuff is global and international. And by having you and others come back and be involved and then educate the young people so they can really get excited about having a future. One of the frustrations is when people don't feel they have a future, they resort to things on a limited vision. And so that vision needs to be opened back up through the kind of advocacy that you can offer and help us to offer, so that people have a sense of hope and hopefulness that there's something in it for them. And so it's going to be challenged. It's not about government. It is about what the people choose to do, but it is about government, because we while we desperately want to be in the game, it's going to take a whole lot of advocacy to help us see that all the way through. So I really appreciate you lending your voice and time to this. And I hope that this is just the beginning of an ongoing conversation, not just, you know, one-time deal. You know, I'd like to come back and I'd like you to snatch some more brothers off the street in California. Hey, man, let's get on here and talk with my guy in Chicago about what's up.
Yeah, I appreciate the involvement, and I got you. Plus, trust me, I'm hitting all my peers up. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's cool to be able to conversate with you, because I'm, you know, living it is one thing, but like knowing the statistics and just learning more about it through conversation is amazing. You know what I mean? So,
okay.
I think that's about it. I wanted to ask one more question, but it was just the question was about like the biggest obstacles left that you got to go through for Green Engine. You know what I'm saying? For its accomplishments and its goal. To accomplish its goals. Like, what's the?
Well, I think we should save some for our next conversation. I don't want
to. Okay, that's what's up.
cover all of them. But no, really, I think, you know, and I also want you to talk about your experience of, as you've traveled around and see how, you know, cannabis is dealt with in Europe, you know, in South America, you know, in Asia. You know, I think that people need to hear that story too, because they can see that how different cultures and different societies have, you know, this thing is coming alive all around the world. It isn't just what's happening here in the United States. And I think having, you know, where we wouldn't be able to do this with Green Engine without you, without Fat Bull, without, you know, having a bigger view. And I think that's just like what we're doing right now, using technology to have a conversation while we're physically apart. That's really not stopping anything from moving forward. And that's the attitude you have to have. We are not taking no for an answer. We're going to try to figure out how to get this license, but we're going to advocate with you and elected officials and community members as best we can. And then we've got to get in the investment community, because none of this will happen unless capital comes to the table and gives social equity a chance in a very real way by writing a check. So this is what's really needed. is the support of, you know, well-intentioned people. So I think people that look over the challenges of this weekend and look at the frustration, the hostility, the anger, the destruction, say, how can I make a difference? Well, you can make a difference by helping an organization like Green Engine get in the community, be at the ground floor level, create solid economic opportunities through employment and jobs, and be in a growth industry that's clearly, you know, the sky's the limit on where this industry could go. And that means the investors are going to do well, the employees are going to do well, the stakeholders and stockholders are going to do well. And if we can do well together, then attitudes can change, minds can change, hearts can change. But we can't have, like we talked about Chicago before, where you look downtown and there's a whole lot of people that's doing a whole lot better than you, and you don't know no way to get down there other than the bus, and all you can do is look. So, you know, it's got to be more to it.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate this conversation. It's amazing. Let's have as many of these as can change these situations that we need to change, man. But big up the Green Engine, and definitely one of my missions is to definitely conversate with my other brothers who are of like mind in this industry, who are also making strides in the cannabis, you know, community, like, you know, brothers like Be Real and, you know what I'm saying, Snoopy and all those guys who, you know, I might see in passing or might talk to, you know, just on some casual stuff when I could be really talking to these dudes about something serious like this. So, you know,
well, they're you know, some Snoop and people are in this in a real way. This is an industry. It's in the industry on the rise. And just like you mentioned, Snoop, I put him right there next to LeBron. It's people who have diversified their game. So they, you know, they got stuff going on. And anytime you see Snoop with Martha Stewart, you can't get no more diverse than that. So,
exactly.
So, hey.
And she's a cannabis advocate. That's
hey. That's right.
Well, thanks again, Bruce. I appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Man. Stay strong.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was just the tip of the joint. We will come back to burn more and ask my man Bruce more questions about the cannabis industry in Chicago. Matter of fact, we're going to broadcast this through Instagram. And all of my followers, if you got any questions, especially my people in the Illinois, the greater Illinois area, if you got any questions, please submit them, comment, you know what I'm saying? Like, subscribe, come check us out, you know what I mean? But yeah, come on back, because on the next episode of Chali 2na in the Fish Tank, we will be asking Bruce more questions. And we might even flip the interview around and let Bruce ask me some questions. All right? Ladies and gentlemen, till next time, Chali 2na, signing off. Was that too much?